Okay, which choice best states the main idea of the text? So we want the main idea. What's the topic and why do we care about it? What's interesting about it? Let's read. In a study of new technology adoption, so-and-so examined negative disconfirmation. No idea what that is, but they'll probably define it for us. In the parentheses, which occurs when experiences fall short of one's expectations. Okay, so negative disconfirmation is when you expect something, but your experience is less than that. You're kind of let down. Okay, so determine whether it could lead to positive outcomes. So could being let down by your expectations lead to a positive outcome? Okay, that's kind of unexpected, I guess. The team focused on established users of smart home technology, which presents inherent utilization challenges, but tends to attract users with high expectations. So this group of smart home technology users have high expectations, right? So that makes them a potential study group for this particular, assessment of negative disconfirmation. So often leading to feelings of dissonance. That's why, because they often have that feeling. The researchers found that many users employed cognitive mechanisms to mitigate those feelings, ultimately reversing their initial sense of disappointment. So the users were, in many cases, disappointed, but they had some rationale, a cognitive mechanism, that's kind of, they reasoned their way through it, to limit or reduce those feelings of dissonance, right? Of lower expected results, lower results than their expectations. So basically they talked themselves into mentally somehow being okay with their disappointment. That's essentially what's going on here. So let's see which answer choice matches that idea. A, research suggests that most users of smart home technology will not achieve a feeling of satisfaction given the utilization challenges. Most users will not achieve a feeling of satisfaction? No. That was a real possibility. That's why that group was selected. But to say most users will not achieve, that's too extreme. That's not going to be the correct answer. And nothing in here says most users are dissatisfied. So that's not right. B, although most smart home technology is aimed at meeting or exceeding users' high expectations, those expectations in general remain poorly understood. No, this is not about the expectations being poorly understood. That's simply not in the passage. C, research suggests that users with high expectations for a new technology, okay, an example would be the smart home technology users, can feel content with that technology even after experiencing negative disconfirmation. Yes, those smart home users felt feelings of dissonance. They were not happy, but they used mental methods to sort of ease or reverse their disappointment. So they ended up not experiencing such a negative disconfirmation. Looks like C is right. Let's check D. Although negative disconfirmation has often been studied, little is known about the cognitive mechanisms shaping users' reactions to it in the context of new technology adoption. Okay, maybe that's why they're doing their study, but I don't see that that's relevant to the question itself. That's not the main idea here at all. So that's somewhat irrelevant. C is the correct answer. Okay, based on the text, this is going to be an according to the text, a fact detail question. What is one advantage of attaching glass beads to particles when using optical tweezers? Okay, this is something we should find the answer, the evidence for in the text itself. So let's read the text. Optical tweezers are specialized scientific tools, particularly useful in biology and medicine, that use high-powered beams of light to trap and manipulate minuscule particles for study. Use of the tool has led to several scientific and medical breakthroughs over the last few decades, but the particles are often under prolonged exposure to the intense heat of the light beams. Okay, so these optical tweezers have been very useful in grabbing small things in biology and medicine, and that's led to breakthroughs. But they have a problem, is that they heat up whatever they're focused on. Okay, that's they're trying, whatever they're trying to grab. So to overcome the risk of overheating, now we're addressing that potential issue, and thereby damage, researchers sometimes attach nano-sized glass beads to particles, allowing the light to focus on the beads instead of the particles. So they're focusing on the beads and not heating up the particles. So that's one possible solution to the overheating issue. So let's see, which answer choice mentions that advantage of the glass beads. A, it decreases the time it takes for optical tweezers to locate. No, it's not about being faster or slower. That's not the right answer. B, it facilitates the maneuvering of particles without directly heating the particles themselves. Yes, that's the idea. I can still grab the particles, but I'm not heating them up by shining directly on them. The glass beads help deflect that. I think that's going to be our answer. Let's check C and D. C, it allows researchers to use weaker light beams to manipulate particles. Nothing says they can use weaker light beams. That's simply not in the passage. D, it adds a material to which particles can transfer any heat absorbed. Any heat absorbed, that's kind of extreme language right there, from the optical tweezer's light beam. So nothing says it's transferring the heat. Nothing says it's heating up the particle and then transferring that to the glass bead. That's not exactly what it says. It says the researchers attached the nano-sized glass beads to particles, allowing the light to focus on the beads, not the particles. So it's not like the light's going to the particles and then that's being distributed to the beads, that heat. No, that's not what's going on, according to the text. B is the correct answer. All right, 19, based on the text, how does the Lord Chancellor respond to the crowd? Okay, so we literally want to find in the text how Lord Chancellor, whoever this is, responds to the crowd. The answer should be there in explicit detail in the text that we can derive and figure out. So let's go ahead and read it. The following text is adapted from Lewis Carroll's 1889 satirical novel, Sylvie and Bruno. A crowd is gathered outside a room belonging to the warden, an official who reports to the Lord Chancellor. Okay, so the warden is not Lord Chancellor, but it reports to Lord Chancellor. Okay, and they're gathered outside the warden's office. Okay, or whatever room this is. One man, who was more excited than the rest, flung his hat high into the air and shouted, as well as I could make out, "Who roar for the sub-warden?" Everybody roared, but whether it was for the sub-warden or not did not clearly appear. Some were shouting bread and some taxes, but no one seemed to know what it was they really wanted. Okay, so what do we know? The crowd is shouting for the sub-warden, and they don't seem to know what they want. Whether it's bread or taxes, they can't seem to make up their mind, the crowd. That much we can see so far. Okay, we haven't seen the Lord Chancellor yet, or his response. So let's keep reading. All this I saw from the open window of the warden's breakfast saloon, looking across the shoulder of the Lord Chancellor. So whoever narrator is, he's standing next to the Lord Chancellor and looking across his shoulder at the crowd in this whole scene. What can it all mean? He kept repeating to himself. So he is probably the Lord Chancellor in this case. What does it all mean? I never heard such shouting before, and at this time of the morning too, and with such unanimity. Unanimity, that means they're all together, right? They're all together, they've got a single-minded purpose. But wait a second, they just told us they don't seem to know what they want here. So that seems in contrast to this statement here from the Chancellor, okay? So how does he respond? He seems to respond that the crowd knows what they want when they don't. Okay. He himself, the Chancellor, has no understanding of what it means, which might be why he thinks they're all together when apparently they're clearly not all together. So let's see what answer choice would match these ideas. A, he, the Lord Chancellor, asks about the meaning of the crowd shouting. That's true. even though he claims to know what the crowd wants. Does he say he knows what the crowd wants? No, he just says they're together, right? That's not what indicating he knows or claims to know what the crowd wants. He clearly doesn't. I think that part's going to be wrong. A is not the right answer. B, he indicates a desire to speak to the crowd. Wait, where does the Lord Chancellor want to speak to the crowd? I never heard such shouting, such unanimity. What can it all mean? He never says he wants to speak to the crowd. That's not correct. C, he expresses sympathy for the crowd's demands, even though the crowd shouting annoys him. So nowhere here does it say he's annoyed, and nowhere does he show sympathy for the crowd's demands, right? Because we don't even know what their demands are. Is it bread? Is it taxes? What is it? That's not right either. D, he decides, the Lord Chancellor that is, the crowd as being united. So he says the crowd is united. Yes, and with such unanimity. So this is true, even though the crowd clearly appears otherwise. And yes, that's true. They are not united. They don't know if they want bread or taxes. They're uncertain. D is going to be our correct answer. Okay, here we've got a main idea of the text. So we need the main idea. What's the topic and why do we care? What's interesting about it? Let's take a look. Some animal behavior studies involve observing wild animals in their natural habitat, and some involve capturing wild animals and observing them in a laboratory. Okay, so we've got the wild versus the lab. Both are possible, environments for a study of animals. Each approach has advantages over the other. In wild studies, researchers can more easily presume that the animals are behaving normally. So in wild, they are normal. They're acting as they normally would. Okay? And in labs, researchers can more easily control factors that might affect the results. There's more control in a lab. Okay? So that's the benefit of the lab. But if, for example, the results from a wild study and a lab study of western scrub jays contradict each other, one or both of the studies must have failed. So if we study the same thing, and our wild study and our lab study of the same thing give different results, something's wrong, right? One of these is wrong, okay? Maybe both, one or both, okay? And that's failed to account for some factor that was relevant to the bird's behavior, okay? All right, so let's see what summarizes the main idea. When the results of a natural habitat study and those from a lab study of a wild animal such as the scrub jay conflict, okay, that is kind of our setup here when that happens, the study in the natural habitat is more likely than the lab study to have accurate. No, how do we know which one is more likely to be accurate? That's an incorrect comparison that's not addressed in the text. The text simply says one or both of the studies is flawed. It's missing a some factor. So B, studying wild animals such as the western scrub jay in both their natural habitat and lab settings is likely to yield conflicting results. Likely to conflict? Nothing says it's likely to conflict. Again, that's just not in the passage. That's not correct. It says when or if there is a contradiction, then one or the other studies must be flawed, but not that they're likely to have a conflict or contradiction. So that's not an idea in the text. C, wild animals such as the western scrub jay can be effectively studied in their natural habitat and in the lab. Okay. But each approach has drawbacks that could affect the accuracy of the findings. So each approach has drawbacks. So each approach has advantages, according to the text, over the other. So that would logically suggest each has drawbacks relative to the other that could affect the accuracy. This looks like it might be quite correct, the main idea. Let's check D. Differing results between natural habitat and lab studies of wild animals. such as the Western scrub jay, are a strong indication that both of the studies had design flaws that affected the accuracy of their results. Okay, this kind of looks good on first read. It is the idea that there's a problem if, they disagree with each other. And the problem here, though, with this answer D is it indicates that both of the studies had design flaws. That's not what it says in the text above. One or both of the study must have failed. Not they both have design flaws. That's not correct. D is, tempting, but not quite correct. C is going to be the better answer. Wild animals can be studied in both environments, but each approach has drawbacks, which is the flip side of the coin that's saying each approach has advantages from the text. C is the correct answer.